If you think your garden is a mess because everything is bolting, well, don't pull out those plants just yet, because what looks like the end of a season might be the beginning of the next. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my garden, showing you exactly which winter veggies that you can save seeds from, which ones you shouldn't, and how to collect the seeds step by step. Plus, I have a free checklist for you to help you do it all by yourself so that you don't miss a single seed. So today I'm out here in the garden and I'm really excited because I have so many different winter veggies that have bolted, went to seed, and are fully ready to save the seeds from. And this actually takes a pretty long time, and in most scenarios, you don't have enough time in the garden to let this happen. So with your summer vegetables, for example, your cucumbers and your tomatoes and your peppers, you can just easily see the seeds. You cut them open, you see those seeds. It doesn't necessarily mean they're always ready or mature to harvest, but you can see them. But the thing with your winter veggies is that it actually takes quite a bit of time for the plant to get to the stage where you can actually harvest those mature seeds. And we have all kinds of seeds that we can save right now. We have celery, cilantro, lettuce, green onions, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, and possibly a few others that I missed. So I'm going to show you what these crops look like. I'm going to show you the process of saving the seeds. And I'm going to also go into depth on why you actually don't want to save seeds from certain varieties depending on which crops you have growing in the garden. So let's start with the cauliflower that's right here. So this is the cauliflower plant that has fully bolted, and now the seed pods are mature and ready to harvest seeds. So you can see that there's these long, slender seed pods, and once they fully dry, pretty much where they crack and they're crispy, those seeds will fall out, and those are the seeds that you can save for next year. Same thing with the broccoli and the Brussels sprouts. They all look very similar. So your cauliflower, your broccoli, your Brussels sprouts, they form these really long, slender seed pods. And this happens after the plant completely flowers. So you can't just pick a head of broccoli and think you're going to save the seeds. You have to let that broccoli plant flower, and then it starts forming these seed pods, and you can see them. They start out green and slender and kind of skinny and long. And then those seed pods start drying. And once the seed pod is completely dry, then you save the seeds. And then we have some Daikon radishes. And I think radishes are actually one of my favorites because the seed pods are a little bit bigger. So they're a little bit easier to manage. The seeds are not quite as small as those from the broccoli and the cauliflower and the kale. And it's just crazy how big the plant actually gets. And then check out this one here. So this is celery, taller than me. Granted, I'm not very tall. I'm only 5'2", but this celery is above my head. And it's just incredible how quickly this plant can shoot up a flower stalk and then start forming seeds. It looks completely different than what it should be if you were harvesting it. But now if I want, I can harvest these seeds from the celery because I have let it go to seed. You can see the flowers are still forming, and so we have to let these seed pods completely dry out before we can actually harvest those seeds, but this is the beginning stage of that process. And then perhaps one of my most favorite ones to save seeds from are green onions. So onions in general are just super easy because you can just clip off the dried seed pods, shake them into a brown paper bag, and all those seeds just fall out. And so if you want to save seeds from your onions, just let the onions bolt and flower, and then you want them to completely dry. You don't want to harvest too soon. You should be able to cut the flower stalk, hold it upside down, and just shake the seeds right out. And that is a clear sign that the seeds are mature and ready to harvest. And then right here we have lettuce that has bolted. It's not quite ready to collect seeds from, but as these flower heads start to dry and fully mature, same thing, you'll be able to just clip those pods and you'll be able to shake the seeds out, and that's when you'll know that they're ready to harvest from. And so here's another really incredible example of a plant that you can save seeds from, and this is cilantro. And this is just one cilantro plant, and who even knows how many seeds are on this plant? I would say thousands and thousands of seeds most likely. So what happens is this plant will flower, and then those flowers are going to start turning into these little tiny seed pods. They look like little balls, kind of. You just want to let the plant completely mature. You want the seed pods to be crispy. So right now, when I pick off that little seed pod and you smush it open, it's still green on the inside. Maybe not quite green, but it's kind of yellow. It's not crunchy. So once those seed pods kind of crunch and crack open, then you'll see the dried seeds fall right out. And then here's another that I forgot to mention in the beginning, and this is cabbage. So if you were to just look at this plant, you probably wouldn't even know what it was. So this cabbage it starts to bolt, and it almost looks like the cabbage itself is just kind of splitting in half. And then it gets these really long shoots that eventually turn into these seed pods that then form the seeds for your cabbage. And so it's a really fun process to actually watch from the beginning of a plant's life to the end of its life cycle when you can actually harvest those seeds, because especially with your winter veggies, they really don't even look like the same plant. And it's really hard to almost even identify what the plant is. And then here's another plant that is starting to flower, and this is an artichoke. So the flowers are actually really pretty. I like to let some just flower just so I can see them. But then as the flowers start drying, like you can see this one right here, they kind of start turning yellow. Then once they're completely dry, you'll be able to just pull these seeds right out, which right now they're not quite dry enough, so they're not pulling out. You can see right over here, we have an artichoke that's starting to form the flower in the middle, and eventually it'll start opening up a little bit more like that. And then it will fully flower. And once these flowers completely dry, you'll be able to just pull the seeds right out. And then here is some kale, and I'm actually still harvesting some leaves from this kale. It's not completely bitter and bad yet. However, when a crop does start bolting, it does usually get a little bit bitter. So I'm just leaving this plant out here so I can save the seeds, but you can see it's shooting up a tall stalk. It hasn't yet started to form its seed pods, but you have to give it time. Eventually, the seed pods on this kale plant are going to look very similar to the cabbage. They're going to look very similar to the Brussels sprouts right here, which one of the things you have to pay attention to is the birds, because the birds really love to come out here and eat these seed pods. And so all of these ones have actually been picked at by the birds. But I'm actually not going to save seeds from all of these plants, and here's why. So I'm sure you've heard of hybrids and heirlooms, or open pollinated varieties. And an heirloom or an open pollinated variety means that when you save those seeds, it's going to produce the same plant the next year. However, if you're growing a hybrid plant, that is a cross from two different plants. And so if you save those seeds, you're not going to get that same variety next year. And so as I'm showing you all of this, I actually can't save all of these seeds because some of these are hybrids, and I don't want to save the seeds because I'm not going to get that same type of plant for next year. However, the process looks the same, and I knew I wanted to film this video to show you the stages of these plants. And so this is what it would look like whether you're growing a hybrid or an heirloom variety. This is the same process. The seed pods look the same. The plants look the same. However, some of these crops I'm actually not going to save the seeds from. Another thing you want to consider is cross-pollination. So we want to first make sure we're saving seeds from heirloom or open pollinated varieties. But then the next thing we want to consider is cross-pollination. So plants that are within the same species can actually cross-pollinate, which means those seeds are not going to be true to type. So for example, we can save seeds in the same family, but we can't save seeds in the same species. So a good example of this would be cabbage and broccoli. They're the same family and the same species. So those seeds can cross-pollinate, and you don't want to go out to the garden and save those seeds if they're in really close proximity. If you want to save seeds from, for example, broccoli and arugula, you can. They are the same family, but they are different species. And so this free guide that I have for you, I actually have all of that written down on a chart, so you don't have to try to find this information. I have all of your cool weather veggies, and I have the families listed, the species, and so you can look through that list and see which ones you should and shouldn't save seeds from if they're in the same area. And so to truly separate these crops, it actually takes quite a bit of space. So they can still cross-pollinate even up to, I think, a half mile or even a mile apart, which I know is kind of unrealistic. But if you have a garden row like this and they're right next to each other, there's a very good chance that there was cross-pollination happening. And so I'm not going to save seeds from my broccoli and my cabbage and my Brussels sprouts. They're all the same species, and I should just assume that they all cross-pollinated. However, I do have different crops like the celery and artichokes and Daikon radishes and some lettuce and some cilantro that are all different plant families and species. And so I can go out and save the seeds from those, no problem. And so if you're ready to save seeds from your own garden, a couple steps to take are first to think ahead. Think of what you want to save seeds from. And if you plan ahead and keep certain crops isolated or just grow one species of that plant family in a specific area, then you know you can save those seeds. And again, make sure you're planting an heirloom or open pollinated variety. And if you don't plan to save seeds, no problem if you plant everything close together. The crop you get that year will be just fine. However, for saving seeds, things of the same species can cross-pollinate. So keep that in mind. And then remember that it's going to take quite a bit of time for that crop to actually get to the point where you can save the seeds. So a lot of these crops have been in the ground for about 8+ months. And so if you don't have the space, that might be something else to consider. So if you don't have the space to keep these crops in the ground because you know you have to plant your spring or summer veggies in that same area, then don't worry about saving the seeds. Or maybe you can be strategic and place it right in the corner of a raised bed, somewhere where it will be out of the way and you can still plant other crops in that same area. The reason I was able to keep all these in the ground to make this video is because I'm not using this specific row this year, and I knew that, and so I kept everything. I didn't rip anything out, even though I knew a lot of these are hybrids, a lot of them cross-pollinated. I wanted to show that full process from start to finish. And then the next thing is to store your seeds in a cool, dry, and dark place. So keeping them in a pantry or in a cabinet, somewhere in your house where it's just a pretty constant temperature. Dark is preferable, and then just put them in paper envelopes or glass mason jars, and that is a great way to save your seeds. And really, you want to use these seeds up, not necessarily store them away forever, and so use up your older seeds first, keep your newer ones for later. However, also know that some seeds don't have a very long shelf life, and so onions are a great example. They don't have the longest shelf life, and so you don't want to just store them away for 5 or 10 years. You want to try to use them and then just save more seeds next year. So keep that in mind, store them in a cool, dry, dark place, and you'll be good to go. So I encourage you to try seed saving in your garden. It is really a great way to get the most out of your garden. I mean, if you just look at the cilantro plant, for example, that's one plant and it's going to give me thousands and thousands of seeds. If you just pick a couple plants that you can save seeds from, that's going to save you quite a bit of money if you add that up every year. It's seeds that you don't have to buy. And another really cool thing about saving seeds from your own garden is that plants adapt to your own climate. And so when you save those seeds from your own garden, those seeds become more adapted to your climate and grow better in your exact garden. So being strategic, growing some crops that you can save the seeds from and then planting them again is just going to make your garden grow better and better each season. And so be sure to head to the link in the description and grab your free seed saving guide so that you can go through the list of cool weather veggies, figure out which ones are in the same species so that you know to separate them, and then you can have a successful seed saving season. And I know today was all about saving seeds from cool weather vegetables, but if you're interested in saving seeds, I think you'll really like this next video because it's all about saving basil seeds, which is a great summer crop to save your seeds from. And so if you head to that video next, you can check it out. We'll see you there.